I'm Travis Bader, and this is the Silvercore Podcast. Join me as I discuss matters related to hunting, fishing, and outdoor pursuits with the people and businesses that comprise the community. If you're new to Silvercore, be sure to check out our website, www.silvercore.ca, where you can learn more about courses, services, and products that we offer, as well as how you can join the Silvercore Club, which includes $10 million in North America-wide liability insurance to ensure you are properly covered during your outdoor adventures. If you really want to get deep into the backcountry to explore areas that see little to no hunting or fishing pressure, a jet boat can unlock that pristine wilderness. This podcast was recorded on the side of a river inside a Thunderjet aluminum boat with expert operator Robert Bryce. Robert provides important tips and tricks and insight that can help you get to your dream location and back safely. So I'm sitting down on the side of the beautiful Skeena River just outside a historic 1900s ghost town with Robert Bryce on his Thunderjet jet boat. Robert, welcome to Silvercore Podcast.
Oh, thanks a lot, Travis.
You've got an interesting history. You teach and help out at the University of BC, don't you? University of Northern BC, I should say.
Yeah, University of Northern BC with our campus based out of Prince George. And we encompass the whole northern half of the province. And we're fortunate enough to have a campus in Terrace, which I work out of.
You also have your own tourism business.
Yeah, so I have a little touring jet boat business called Northern BC Jet Boat Tours, which I actually contract myself in a sense to the university for a series of adventure tours, and then also do a bunch of other jet boat touring on my own.
So when you take people out on these jet boat tours, what exactly are you doing?
A lot of them are focused on kind of little niche-based, unique tours focused on Northwest BC. So, one of the highlights that I think we have is a series of ghost town tours. So we're fortunate enough to have 5 or 6 kind of unique and almost exclusive ghost towns in this area. So that would be one of them. Grizzly bear viewing. So, we have lots of coastal rivers here and estuaries and that with grizzly bears in them and some really healthy populations. So we can go out and watch, grizzly bears from the safety of a boat and makes everyone feel comfortable. It's other stuff of this area. We have canneries tours, so we have a long history of salmon canneries on the base of mouth of the Skeena River. So we'll go and look at those and talk all about the history and look at the remnants that still remain, from that late 1800, early 1900 days. We also have the Skeena River, which we're sitting on right now, and we do a tour, a 5-day tour down the Skeena River and looking at all of the history and scenery and wildlife, staying at accommodations on the edge each night. So that's definitely one of the highlights, especially on a nice day like today, where it's nice and sunny out. And it's a series of other rivers with waterfalls and, ecology, culture, whale watching even, kind of looking at what we have in Northwest BC, what other people might want to see, and take them out to see these things and experience it.
Can I get a shameless plug in? Like if people wanted to experience this, where would they go? Where would they look?
I have a website. It's www.northernbcjetboattours.ca, or they can just Google that and my Facebook site will come up as well, and info@northernbcjetboattours.ca, and send me a note. And we can customize any tour for whoever, and get multiple boats out there, and just depending on what people's interests are. If they're interested in scenery, wildlife, culture, history, or a combination, we can definitely set something up for them.
And you teach jet boating out of the university, don't you?
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily teach the course. We have an instructor that teaches it, but I definitely help out and assist with the course. So we're fortunate enough to have the flexibility to kind of run almost anything and everything out of our continuing studies department that I work for. And jet boat safety is one of them. And we do a lot of courses for ministries like, the Department of Fisheries, lots of the First Nation communities, and their fishery programs, fishery consultants, biologists. And, it's just a program or a course that's really not out there. And a lot of people are tasked with sending their staff out to run a jet boat. And, unless they're doing that training internally, they have to have some sort of training at least to cover them off. And, so we have a 1-day class and 1-day on the river jet boat course where people are actually driving the boats, and myself and our main instructor will be out there with the students and giving them, all the stuff that we know we can share with them to run a boat safely. And, this course is for people who want to run a boat safely, not for cowboys or guys who want to jump gravel bars. And, if that's your thing, then this course probably isn't for you. But if you want to be, we treat it like being a captain of a boat or a ship, and you're responsible responsible for those people, whether they're staff members or family or whoever, getting them back safely at the end of the day. And that for us is the most important thing, is that they're putting their trust in you. And here's all the tips we know of. And, being cautious. So that's, the one thing. We're not, running rivers we've never run before. And if we are, we're scouting them and pre-scouting and stuff like that. So it's a lot of safety stuff. And like I said, that's the kind of the foremost thing we focused on in the course.
So I guess jumping up gravel bars would be level 2, would it?
Yeah, level 2. And we call them the cowboys, and, these guys who have the sporty boats. And it looks fun to me, but, I value my boat a little bit more maybe. And some of these other guys are, they got money to burn and, impellers to burn. They're sucking up gravel continually. And, a boat like this might be $3,000 to redo the impellers. And some of those guys will do that, 2 or 3 times a year.
Whoa.
They're pumping more gravel out of their boat than they are water. And so to each their own if that's their thing. But, our course and, what we do is more, tours and focused on, running some nice rivers, but doing it safely. And
So I've always wanted a jet boat. I've got a aluminum boat that I take out into the Georgia Strait and do some fishing in, but I've wanted a jet boat so I can get into the shallower areas and hunting in the lower mainland and take it up some of our rivers. For somebody who's never owned or operated a jet boat before, what are some considerations that I should be thinking about maybe in purchasing and once I have one?
Well, I always tell people, what do you think you're going to be doing with this boat? Because one boat will not serve all your needs. We're on a big boat here that can run, decent-sized rivers and go out on the ocean, but it will not run, skinny rivers where lots of boulders and shallow areas. So you have to decide where you're going to be running your boat and pick a boat for that application. And, also within your budget as well. Money's always an issue as well. So I always tell people, where are you going to be running your boat primarily? How many people are going to be going in your boat? That'll decide how much power you need for that boat. Is it just you and your wife, or are you a hunter that's going to get that 1,000-pound moose and want to carry it out of some remote river? Well, you need more horsepower for that and a bigger pump. And so, are you doing fisheries work out of the back of it? Do you want a motor sitting in the back, or do you want an outboard motor if you're doing fisheries work and having a big platform at the back of your boat? So it just really depends on, what you're going to be using that boat for. Then once people have decided that, we help people kind of narrow it down to the type and size and length and, what kind of V on the bottom. Is it flat bottom? Does it, have a good V for, running in bigger water and oceans and lakes and that? If you're just running your boat out in the lake, then you don't need a flat bottom boat that's, going to pound your kidneys all day long. So there's lots of options out there between types and sizes of motors and lengths. And it's almost endless. And then you have, inflatable boats, so that's one thing that's kind of getting more popular now is inflatable jet boats. So, something that's a bit more portable and you can move them around, deflate them, put them inside another boat. So, lots of
I like that idea.
there. Yeah.
So just like an outboard jet?
An outboard jet. I have another small jet boat that it's a two-stroke motor that you can actually, 1 or 2 guys can actually carry the motor. So I can put it in a bigger jet boat like this. I can put the inflatable in a bigger jet boat like this. So I basically have 2 boats in one, and then use the big boat to access areas that you wouldn't normally get to, and push the small one off and put the small 2-stroke jet motor on and access small creeks that out in the ocean that you wouldn't normally run a small jet boat like that out there, but having the big one to, for transportation. So, lots of options. I'm not a hunter, but, I know guys love to hunt, and, putting an ATV on the back of your boat is something that a lot of hunters would probably like. And I've done that with this boat. A little platform built on here, some ramps, and load up that ATV, and you can go push that off on, some bar or, where they've logged out in some ocean valley or creek, and run that ATV up there and be probably one of the only people hunting up there with your ATV.
Now that's cool.
So it just depends on what you want to use that boat for, and it's almost endless, to be honest. And just know the limitations of the boat you're getting. That.
Now you recently did a trip in this boat, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about it? You started talking about it, but I asked you to save it.
Yeah. So I love to fish, and with COVID this year, one of the things that happened was a couple lodges on the Lower Dean River, which is probably the premier steelhead river in the province, were shut down, and that gave us an opportunity to go down there and fish, a river that basically nobody is going to be on, none of the clients, no guides, nothing on there. So something you wouldn't think about is taking a jet boat 9 hours to a river to go fish, but we decided to do it mostly inland ocean water and ended up being pretty calm. But 9 hours of jet boating to get to a river that really only has 3 kilometers of jet boatable water, and then there's a big canyon. But primarily, we had that river to ourselves, fishing it for 5 days, and then jet boated back, to Kitimat. So from Kitimat to the Dean River, 6 hours to Shearwater, gassed up at Shearwater. And that's about the extent of the limit of this boat for gas. So 6 hours, 7 hours of running time. We did bring some extra, gas cans with us just for safety purposes. And then, gassed up, and 3 hours into the Dean, 3 hours back. That was another full tank. And then 6 hours back. It ended up being about 18, 19 hours in total of boating that we did there and back. But beautiful trip, lots of fish, and one of those trips of a lifetime that you won't forget.
No kidding. Was that the first time you've taken it out on the ocean like that?
That far. I mean, I've done 2 and 3 hour one-way ocean trips, so never really more than a full tank on the boat. So that was definitely the furthest I've done it. But I've been out in areas similar areas of that. Coming in from Bella Coola or out from Kitimat. So there was only maybe a couple hours I'd never been on in that stretch. So I was fairly familiar with the water, and I knew that fairly protected. There's no open water that you're going to hit, and all the safety precautions. We got radio, satellite phone, everything. If something did happen, we were set up for pretty much anything that could happen.
Now, I saw something on I think it was Tourism BC. They did a video, and you were in it.
Yeah,
and that was talking about the ghost towns.
Yeah, it's something that's kind of unique to this area, and one of my passions definitely is we're fortunate here to have 5 or 6 different kind of ghost towns, all resource towns. So, BC is really a resource town. We extract resources. So all these ghost towns once provided a resource. So there are a lot of them are mining towns. Kitsalt, there was a molybdenum mine shut down in 1982 as a full community there with malls, shopping centers, swimming pools, movie theaters, apartments, everything. We kind of have exclusive access to bring tours and guests in there. Another one called Alisarm, a silver mining town, another resource. Another one half hour away by boat is Antioch. Probably one of the most interesting ones. Was a copper mining town in the early 1900s that had everything there. Had Canada's largest dam at one time, which is still standing there, a big concrete dam, which is in the middle of nowhere. So impressive. And then Port Essington is a salmon cannery down in the Lower Skeena. Doreen, another mining and agricultural town that we're actually fairly close to right now. Yeah, and then there's some other ones up in the mountains, some other mining towns. So all resource-based ghost towns that, it's typical. We go in, we set up shop, extract a resource, and when the resource is depleted, we move on, and, whatever remains in these towns. A few people remain sometimes, but yeah, a lot of these now are totally abandoned, or a few people may have taken up a summer home or cottage in these places. So yeah, we're lucky enough to have that, and it's really surprising the number of people I know that have this passion for ghost towns and history, especially in the province.
So this one that was, I guess, became a ghost town in the 80s there, you said it's got movie theaters, or a movie theater and apartments and... Yeah,
it was only open for a year and a half. So the American company came in and built a whole community there. There's, I think, 100 houses. There's 7 apartment buildings, swimming pool, library, school, there's just all kinds of stuff there. There's a curling rink up there, a pub, a couple restaurants, post office, a Sears, the Royal Bank. Yeah, just everything in this town. And it's basically a time capsule going back to the 80s that those of you that are familiar with that, the old Harvest Gold appliances and that, and, all the houses have these big ashtrays in them still. And, it is really going back in time and brings back a lot of memories from growing up and seeing these things that, as a kid.
So if somebody came on one of your tours, they'd be able to see one of these places or maybe a couple?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. We've done multiple trips where we'll go to all 5. But, over 2 or 3 days, you can see 3 of them definitely. I just came back from one here a couple days ago. And, yeah, we take interested people into these places. And they're all, mostly privately owned. So it's, or you need a permit to get into some of them. So it's... They are challenging to get to, ocean stuff, a lot of driving and, weather, stuff like that. And then when you get there, we actually have the option of staying in 3 of them as well overnight. So we provide accommodations in 3 of the ghost towns. You actually get to overnight in these places. Sometimes we're the only people there in these towns, and, you're creaking and noises and other stuff. But yeah, it's quite unique.
So do you research other ghost towns throughout BC, or are you primarily interested in the ones in this area?
Primarily these ones. I do have an interest, some more of the coastal ones down the coast, Buttedale, Ocean Falls, and Namu. There's actually quite a few ghost towns, even Alaska, just for personal interest up in the Panhandle has a ton of canneries up there that I know and have read a lot about. It'd be interesting to go up and visit them. And a lot of them are fairly intact as well. Yeah, especially when you know a little bit of the history about all of them and the stories in that, they kind of come to life that way. So, yeah, primarily Northwest BC is what my passion is now. But, that being said, if I see a ghost town when I'm traveling somewhere, I'll definitely try and get in and visit it.
Now, I heard about, I think it was Diefenbaker's Bunkers. Have you heard anything about this one?
No, I'm not familiar with those.
I heard there's an abandoned military base, and I figured if anyone knew about this sort of stuff, it would be the guy who researches ghost towns.
Yeah, I mean, we have some military stuff here. The mouth of the Skeena River, Prince Rupert, during the war, we had... there's some pillboxes and other stuff at the mouth of the Prince Rupert Harbor that were all armed. We had nets going across the harbor, thinking the Japanese subs were going to come in and torpedo our, I don't know what we had there for fishing boats or whatever. We had a train that went up and down the Skeena twice a day that was an armament train, with, guns sticking out of it and, full of armor. And this thing would make, I think, a trip in the middle of the night and one in the day looking for, Japanese subs that entered the mouth of the Skeena or boats coming up. So, yeah, we ran this military train, which is, a lot of photos and stories about that one going up and down the Skeena. So, we do have a little bit of war history and in that, even in this area as well.
That is so cool. And then, of course, fishing. You take people out fishing?
Yeah, another thing I do some fish guiding on the side, which I love to do, take people out and, hopefully get them into some fish and, experience this, the rivers that we have in this area, which are just endless. We have the Skeena, the second largest river in the province here, and so many tributaries off that and so many access points in Northwest BC here for accessing the ocean and then, small tributaries and rivers off that are all different in their own way with different species and timing and with all the different fish that we have. So it really is just a fisherman's paradise up here for that. And, we can start fishing, pretty much year round for steelhead here. But, some of the salmon show up in late April and we'll go into November. And, in between that period, it's just one species after another and different timing between all the, the systems that we have.
So if we go back to jet boating a little bit, you can access some pretty remote areas with a jet boat.
Oh yeah, the places you can get with a jet boat here, it really is endless. And I'm always looking on Google Earth for new places that I can get into with my boats, and especially these new inflatables with the small jets that you go to places that are otherwise helicopter accessible only, and even some of those there's nowhere to land on some of these small creeks, and it's really opened up some of the systems here. And we're fortunate enough to have a number of tributaries, especially on the Skeena, that have never been logged. So logging is also a big thing up here. But we do have some tributaries where, there is no logging, no industry, nothing up these places. They are totally pristine, and you can take a jet boat, 30 kilometers up some of them. There's even, a couple. I think I went up one this year that was probably in the 80, 90 kilometer range. I went up 65 with this boat, and then probably another 30 with the small inflatable after that. It almost from the Skeena Valley over to the Douglas Channel. It's hard to if you don't have a map in front of you, but it's just like I said, the possibilities are endless here with the number of tributaries we have, and just the technology today with these jet boats and tunnels and how flat they are and plastic and everything that they're putting into them. And you wait for a little bump of water on some of these, a little bit of rain or freshet, and you can go into spots that you'd otherwise never be able to get into.
So we talking about the training course, and is that something that's open to only UNBC students, or can somebody just sign up for that one particular course?
No, it's primarily for people in the community. So, I would say people that are new to jet boating that aren't that familiar with it, want to get some experience, learn some tips and tricks in that before they get out. Maybe they're even looking at it, buying a new jet boat. And, we have, usually 5 or 6 jet boats there, different sizes, types. They get to see all the different brands and types and sport jets and V8s and outboards and all the different pumps and Hamiltons and, it's American turbine. There's just so many different options. So they'll actually get a good feel for what's out there. So that's probably one audience. And then the other is the, kind of that working kind of, DFO, BC, the conservation officers, fisheries technicians and biologists. They're a big audience as well. So they'll come out and take that to, kind of, I guess, tick off that WorkSafe BC. They need some sort of training, and, WorkSafe nowadays is, if there's not a course out there, you have to do something, whether it's, training your staff internally or taking the next available, best course that's out there. So this usually ticks off that box, in combination with, more training from someone in the company. They're not just going to let them loose on a big $50, $60, $100,000 boat, but at least it gets them started. And so that would primarily be our market for that course. And yeah, very popular, like I said, just a wide range of people that have taken that, and lots of good things to say about it, that they get out there and kind of get this mindset. And there's still things today, for myself, who I'm out there almost every day, it seems, jet boating. I still think of the things that we learn in that course that I still hold true, where to run a boat, and going out and checking, rivers and levels, and, walking them prior to going out there, and running it with your boat. Like, just, especially if I have guests on board that, I keep, oh yeah, and that in the course, we do this, and it all comes back to you.
So when I'm out in the ocean, we've got navionics and bathymetry that'll show us a pretty good idea of what the ocean floor looks like.
Yeah.
But with the rivers changing so often, do they have any sort of thing like that, or is all just local knowledge and running the rivers slowly at first and getting used to it?
Yeah, I think it's more that there really isn't anything out there. One of the best things is going with someone first who's run the river, and making a lot of mental notes there. There is, Google Earth and Bing Maps. There's a few on some of these tidal rivers that do show the gravel bars and that, if they're tidal. That'll give you a good idea, especially if you're going to run some of these coastal rivers that are very tidal. You try and go in at low tide. Some of them fan right out, and there's one slot in there to get up in in a boat at low tide, which, I get anxious even running a jet boat at low tide up some of these tributaries, that flow into the ocean. So, but yeah, there's really not much out there. Just, talking to people. We have some local rivers here that, you talk to enough people, there's a cascade here, a little fall here, a slot here, there's some rocks here, watch out for that. Talk to them, and then, try and maybe piggyback with someone else. And that's what I try and do, is ask a lot of questions. Or I go up and very cautious. I get out and I walk a section. Okay, I can get through there. I don't just run it and hope for the best.
Right.
I value my my boat and everything, and and the people on the boat as well. So, for us, like I said, we don't just run things without knowing. We'd either talk to people, or we're common sense. The river's very high and almost in flood stage, and there's not a lot of debris. We know we can get through a lot of the stuff, but. Here we're on the Skeena River. It's actually a little dirty right now, so you can't see bottom. You're kind of going visually, what a little pillow looks like behind a rock or a boulder, and what a shallow riffle looks like. But every once in a while, stuff does catch up on you. And I always tell people, we do our best, but those things do happen. Eventually, you will hit a rock eventually in your life, or nudge something, or you're out in the river enough. It's just, it's inevitable. Or you get those close calls where you're, ooh, I just missed that one. Or, oh, what about that one? That was a close call. And, eventually you hit that stump that, is under the water, that, doesn't have any, it doesn't send any message to you that there's something there. It's dead calm, and it's six inches below the water, or 4 inches. And, there's really nothing you can do sometimes, unless you want to idle up a river, but that's not feasible most times. So, yeah, stuff does happen, but you just kind of try and minimize those as much as you can.
When you're not jet boating and giving tours, what are you doing?
I'm out fishing lots. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think what that seems to take up most of my time, to be honest. Is I like to explore, though. I like to read. Love to find new books on history, culture, environment of this area, and any material that's come out there. I love picking up on that stuff and reading about it. And people are always telling me about someone else is writing a new book about this area, and hearing those stories from the past. So, which probably wasn't really interested in that maybe 20 years ago, but these days, yeah, I just can't wait to get myself into a good book on some history of the local area. So I would say that, to be honest, I don't have a lot of other hobbies right now, other than being on the boat. And when I do get a spare day, when I'm not out doing a tour for someone, or doing some fish guiding, I'm either out fishing, or just out, I don't know, seeing wildlife, watching bears, or trying to find some wolves or something. So if I get stir crazy after a couple days and need to be going out. And I have a little bucket list of rivers on my list that I want to go up and try out, and especially with the little inflatable jet boat, and get up there as far as I can and see what what the system looks like, and just tick them off one by one. And so I would say that's what I do with any of my free time, is just out in the river on my own.
Have you ever had any issues on the river?
Yeah, I had, I got lots of stories. When I first started jet boating, you get out there, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and not understanding tides is always, one of the biggest.
Ooh,
and going up, one story was a tidal tributary of the Skeena. I went up with some friends, and we didn't realize how far the tide went up this tributary, and we packed up all our gear and went up there to go camp on this, found a gravel bar up, I don't know, a couple kilometers up, and got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and it looked like in the dark that my boat was up on the gravel bar, which I thought, that's strange. And then I hopped back into bed, and we were all in a big tent with air beds. We woke up in the morning, and the thing was full of 3 or 4 inches of water. The tide had come up right into our tent and had pushed the boat right up onto the gravel bar.
Oh, man.
We had no idea that, now I would laugh if I heard of someone else, telling that story. Why didn't they look and see where the tide line was? Where's the debris pushed up to? And, there's all kinds of indicators, looking at the tables and things that you can see where the highest tide has actually been. But I was young and, younger and naive and, really not aware of, I haven't had any, incidences where we've been hurt or, stranded, but, like lots of stories where I've, spent 5 or 6 hours out there because of the tides. Or, my first boat, you probably didn't want to see what the bottom looked of that. It was pretty beat up with hitting lots of rocks and boulders and that. And I was just telling you the story how pretty much the first rock I've hit in this in 18 months, like even tweaked, was out on the ocean. A little sunken reef there that kind of caught me off guard while we were watching a bear on shore. So that was, now I'm, like
good reminder.
Yeah, a lot smarter. But I realized that I still got to be on my toes, and I still get even jet boating. I still get anxious and nervous going up systems all the time. I go up for the first time or low tide, and I think that's good to be cautious. And I see people I know that are, we call them weekend warriors, that get out maybe with their jet boat a few times a year, and you see them go up these systems, and I'm always amazed that they go up there in them without very little training or, knowledge of the rivers. And but then you do hear the stories, oh, so-and-so sunk his boat, put a hole in it. And you hear those stories, all the time, that someone had to go rescue someone. And so I'm just thankful that's not me. And that, and all my stuff is, professional development, I call it. If I'm out by myself, I'm learning rivers, learning about the river, and always staying current. So that's my professional development for my business.
Well, many years ago, I was into the rivers, and I really loved rafting, and would go down in just cheap old Canadian Tire rafts. And then I got a World War II inflatable from a gun show and started running that down like the Elaho and the Thompson and Nahatlatch, and then finally got a proper commercial whitewater raft, which I still got sitting upstairs at the office.
Yeah.
And one thing that I learned coming into it, at first you look at some really gnarly looking water, only to find later on that it's actually pretty safe. You just kind of bob over top, and then you can see some water that looks, otherwise to the untrained eye pretty safe, to find that it's something that could be pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
Are there similarities to that in the jet boating? Like, are there things that when you're starting out you'd think, it's fine, let's run it, only with a bit more experience to say,
Yeah, I would say there's things like that. I mean, one of the things that I always find is when the water is shallow and I come up in this boat, which is a big boat, and I look at the gravel size, it's relatively small. Your intuition is maybe to slow down a bit, but it's not. You have to put that throttle down and speed up, and you can just feel it. As you put that throttle down, you think, wow, you're getting into shallow water, you're going to go even faster, with rocks and stuff coming up, but that's what you have to do. You can feel the back end rise up a few inches, and you'll put it up to, maybe 50 kilometers an hour, even more, just to get over those shallow riffles and then pull it right back again. And so I've learned that's one of the things that, maybe not intuitive, but that, and then speed. The guy who taught me how to jet boat was, especially going downriver, is speed's your enemy. And I still remember that. You get in this false sense of security. You're cruising down 50 kilometers an hour when you can be going down just barely on step, at 35 kilometers an hour. Stuff comes at you so fast down the river. And if you're not familiar with that river, I keep catching myself, I'm going 50K an hour. Slow her down a bit. Stuff comes at you really fast, and you can't react fast enough. And, the guy who bought my first jet boat, a friend of mine, he probably, if he heard this podcast, he'd probably hate me for saying this, but yeah, we went up a river that was fairly high and relatively easy to run, and I think he put us in the rhubarb and gravel bar 3 or 4 times on the way down and putting a few more dents in the bottom of that boat, and I was basically yelling at him, slow down, sacrifice, inch or two of flotation in the water for some control. And he would come around these corners at Mach 1, and I'm basically trying to pull the throttle back on him so he had some control, and he just couldn't make the corners, up on the gravel bar, into the brush, into the tree. Every one of them was because of too much speed. And I think that's something that new people, they get that 50K an hour, the throttle's down, and upriver it's not as bad, but going downriver on technical rivers, you have to go down under control, and with an inflatable, it barely drafts anything. I'll go down idling down these things, which is barely enough control because you can't make some of the corners.
Right.
Big nuggets that'll pinch your inflatable, pop it, sticks, logs. You don't draft almost nothing less in an inflatable. So come down with control and get down there. Maybe you'll bounce into something. Even your boat, if you're down under control, maybe you'll bounce into something, but more than likely you'll have control to make those corners. So I always so speed is your enemy is kind of ingrained into me when I'm going downriver on a new, a new system. Maybe not on the Skeena here where it's fairly forgiving in that we don't have the big tight turns and logs and big nuggets everywhere. But any of our smaller systems, there's so, like I said, so many things I remember from the guy who taught me, and the first thing he ever taught me was, look at your bow line. And he took my bow line, which was really long. I thought, I want to have this so I can tie off on trees, on shore, and whatever. And he took that thing and he ran it down the bottom of my boat, and it went right to the very end of my boat.
Ooh.
And I go, well, what's the big deal with that? And he says, this will inevitably flop out the front of your boat. You're going to hit a wave or something, and it's going to go right down the middle, right into your impeller. You're going to suck it up, and you're going to be stranded.
You're not having a good day.
Yeah, so we cut that off and shortened it. So, it was a few feet shorter than the intake of my boat, and just stuff like that for new people that maybe not, but that was the first thing he did was take my bow rope, and shorten it up. And whoever owned the boat before me, he obviously had this big long bow rope because it was still on there. And I just thought nothing of it, that, it's nice having a big long rope I can tie off and whatever. But yeah, lots of, most people would know stuff like that, but, maybe not if they're brand new.
Yeah, totally. Well, is there anything else we should be talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. It was just like I said, it's nice to meet you and be out here with you on the river and learn a lot about you. And I know you were talking about maybe, being out here, a jet boat might be in your future, and you'd probably be a good candidate for one. You're into, safety, which is always a good thing. And sounds like you've rafted a lot of rivers, rivers. And that's probably one of the main things about jet boating is reading the river. You know where the current is, where the pillows, the rapids, and that kind of stuff, where the deeper water is, the V's and everything else. So that's sometimes half the battle with jet boating is being able to read the water in the river. And, if you can figure that out, then, you got her made. And yeah.
Well, Rob, thank you very much for taking the time. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thanks for having me.